panorama on Whither Security in the Black Sea region. I'd like to thank you for signing in and joining us. We're having a slight problem with one of our speakers who is trying to join us, Tedo Japaridze, but we decided to start the process, and hopefully he will be joining us during the meeting. It's a technical issue. Again, briefly, my name is Dimitri Dafilu. I'm the director of the CIS, and this is a new initiative that we launched very recently, given the fact that most of us were stuck at home, how to communicate with the rest of the world using the wonders, or not, maybe not the wonders, of technology. This is our second installment. We had a big discussion on Greek-Turkish relations last week. And today we decided to move ahead with our expert panel to talk a little bit about the Black Sea. So maybe I should start, maybe Mustafa, Aydin, you want to say a couple of words also, since both our organizations are partners in this process. Go ahead. No.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. Just a few words. Let me welcome everybody also for the Foreign Policy Talk series. As Dimitri said, this is the second installment. Next week we'll have another one, this time on Cyprus. But today the focus is Black Sea. This is a cooperation between Panorama, which is an online platform created by International Relations Council of Turkey about a few months ago, just when we were entering the Corona problem. And since then we've been working to set up it very successfully, I would add. And I urge you to check on it in the web. CS is, of course, has been a long partner of UIC, International Relations Council of Turkey, and now we are partnering in this Foreign Policy Talk series. Thank you, Dimitri. Just welcome everybody, and let's start.
All right. Thank you very much, Mustafa. So today, as I said, we are waiting for one of the speakers to join us. He's having technical problems, Tedo Japaridze. While we wait for him to join us, we can start. The other speakers on the panel are Hannah Shelest, who is the editor-in-chief of Ukraine Analytica and a board member of the Foreign Policy Council, the Ukrainian Prism. Hannah is a very well-known figure in terms around the Black Sea, in terms of Black Sea security. She's been championing the issue, as well as her country's, Ukraine's, foreign policy. She's one of the young generations of Ukrainians that are committed somehow to ensure that some sort of security framework manifests itself in the region, in this difficult region. And before her current titles, she was for a long time a senior researcher at the National Institute for Strategic Studies under the President of Ukraine in the Odessa branch. Has received a number of fellowships around the world, and now is based in Odessa, her hometown, from where she reaches out to the rest of the world. Our other speaker is Alina Inaye, the director of the Black Sea Trust for Regional Cooperation, which is based in Bucharest, and she's also the director of the Bucharest office of the German Marshall Fund. She joined the German Marshall Fund in 2007, and unlike the other of us in the panel, Alina comes from a civil society background, in the sense that she has been an active practitioner in the field of international development democratization, having run Freedom House office in Ukraine in 2004, and the NDI office in Russia between 2000 and 2003. And the focus there was on civic education and political processes. In fact, the Black Sea Trust for Regional Cooperation, ever since it was founded, has been very, very active in promoting civil society projects all across the region. And Mustafa Aydin, my partner in crime in this, is, as we just heard, the president of the International Relations Council of Turkey. He's also a colleague of mine at Kadir Has University in the Department of International Relations, where he previously served for 8 years as the rector, the president of the university. he has been very, very active as an academic in publishing and writing, and as an analyst about the Black Sea region, the Caucasus, Turkey's policies towards the region, Russia's policies towards the region. And he and I worked together some years ago. It's been over 10 years now. We produced a report with the help, among others, of the Black Sea Trust on a 2020 vision for the Black Sea region, where we thought, when we wrote this report in 2010, we thought that there were ways for things to look better 10 years down the road. And as I'm thinking about this report, before I give the floor to the speakers, I was just thinking whether we are at a moment in time where a defining moment, just like the end of the Cold War was a defining moment, whereby countries, not only in the Black Sea region, but all over the world, were trying to reconsider the security considerations, given the fact that bipolarity was over. And therefore, a lot of them try to work together regionally, bilaterally, trilaterally, and regionally. And this happened in the Black Sea region with Ankara and Russia and Moscow taking the lead in trying to bring together in some sort of framework the countries of the region. And one of these initiatives was the BSEC, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation, which evolved into an organization and now includes 12 members, not only from the 6 countries around the Black Sea, but other countries as well. And in dealing with a number of low politics issues, on economic cooperation issues, the BSEC is still around, but the setting has changed. And we know over the last couple of years, maybe more, we are living in not necessarily in this post-Cold War era or the American decade that many thought had occurred with the end of the Cold War, but we are living in a sort of a transactional world, a liquid world, whereby there are many doubts as to whether the United States is anymore, whether it wants to be. This is more the question. The power, among others, as an external stakeholder with a significant impact on the region, as a balancer to Moscow and other countries. And if it doesn't, well, maybe are we in an era at a time when we are again reconsidering what our security considerations are. And I think this is a primary issue, and this is some of the things that we would like to explore. So we'll start off with maybe a couple of rounds of questions and answers from the speakers, and then anybody who wants to ask questions, please use your chat, and I will try to accommodate you and have the speakers respond. But the first round is really, we would like to hear from the speakers, what is the state of security in the Black Sea region today? How has it changed since the end of the Cold War? And maybe what they can tell us, since we have speakers right now from Turkey, from Romania, from Ukraine, and hopefully from Georgia. What are the key issues that they envision from both a regional perspective, but even a national one, as all countries are key stakeholders. So maybe I can start with Alina to give us, you have about 5 minutes to sort of tell us how you see the region right now.
Thank you, Dimitrios. Thank you for inviting me as a speaker to this webinar, and thank you for the question as well. I will be brief because I'm really interested into getting into a conversation as quick as it might be over Zoom with the other participants. And I'll start from what you said. You know, is this a new defining moment? Is this a new redefining moment for the security of the region? Because that's what you're talking about. No, I don't think so. I think the redefining moment for the region and really for European security still remains 2014 and the annexation of Crimea. This has changed the entire paradigm and the entire dynamics, both in the region and even transatlantically when it comes to security. This has changed. This is the most major change since the Cold War. We live now in a region, the Black Sea region, which functions under no international law. Basically, the international law has been violated, which is very strongly militarized, which is subject to many numerous and very diverse aggressions from Russia. It's a very, very different region, and it's a very, very different sea from not only from the end of the Cold War, but as I said, from 2014. And I see three main, if you want to say, features of these dynamics in the region, which is a very, very military one, as I said. First of all, the rule of international law has been forged, has been violated, and we cannot really believe that this is going to be the guiding line, if you want, for all the actors in the region. The region is extremely militarized, as I said, as a result of this, but also what is extremely important is that we see not only in the region, but throughout the transatlantic space, a new posture of the US army, of the US military power, but maybe that's something we can talk about later. And the big question mark, which is, I think, the question mark is a feature of the dynamics in the region, is if this will affect this this new posture that US is designing now, if it will affect the Black Sea region as well. It hasn't so far, but the question mark is still out there. And the third very, very important feature of the region is that the war is there. There is a hot conflict in the region. The aggression that is being done by Russia and by actors in the region is not only military, it's hybrid, it's cyber, it's economic interference, it's disinformation. So the military activity has taken many, well, not old, but renewed forms in the region, which really complicates the entire security landscape.
Thank you, Alina. Very interesting. I note your points about violation of international law, in particular since with the annexation of Crimea in 2014, the big question mark regarding the US military role and how aggression is more than just military. The term hybrid has also become very commonplace in the region. Maybe next, maybe I'll give the floor to Hannah Celeste, to listen to her perspective. The same question applies.
Thank you, Dimitris. It is so good to speak in this company, because you can skip half of your speech and just to confirm what the previous speaker was talking about. And I will start from the phrase that Alina just said, that definitely 2014 was the main point of return or no return. That is also the question for the Black Sea region in terms of the changes. And 1991 definitely was a certain moment of the significant changes. But at that time, for many years after this, we were thinking that, okay, this confrontation and cooperation is something natural for the Black Sea region that we've seen for generations and generations. I mean, competing powers over there, they existed since the ancient times, probably. But after this, we probably used to the security situation that were not so good, but at the same time not dangerous in the Black Sea region. And for many years, we spoke about more of the soft security issues, about energy, about migration, about issues maybe with the navigation, so environmental issues. But we were not following that much the hard security issues. And what 2014 really changed, that we started to speak about the Black Sea region from the classical hard security point of view. We started to speak again about capacities and capabilities. We started to count number of Navy ships and the types of the weapons that we have. But at the same time, it seems to me that the last 6 years also demonstrated that the Black Sea region became a certain testing ground, let's say, for not only this hybrid warfare that we included too many things sometimes in this term, but also about the changes of visions and the probably understanding of the role of Navy and the capacities and capabilities that national armies of this region really need. And if you analyze the Navy strategies or security strategies of the countries around the region, or even if some of them, as Turkey is not publishing these documents openly, but we know some information from there, or we see the procurements that these countries are taking for the last few years, we see that, first of all, countries start to speak not about multilateral initiatives. We speak less and less about the collective security in the Black Sea region. We all forgot about Black Sea Four and Black Sea Harmony, but even without them, we started to think that, we have evidences that countries more and more are working with their coastal guards. So countries are working with the idea how to protect their coast, how to protect their seaports, and how to use and what alternatives are for logistics, first of all, for military logistics, in case there are any problems with Bosphorus. And here, let's be honest, yet one very big topic, elephant in the room, it is the Turkish position about Montreux Convention and the possibilities of working with certain clauses of this convention, especially in the relations between Turkey and the Russian Federation. That's what many countries around the region, and not only, the same for the US and a few of our European partners, who are waiting for the certain articulation of the Turkish position. What can be the case when Turkey is ready to close Bosphorus for the Russian military ships, Navy ships, in case of any jeopardizing to the either national security of Turkey or to the situation in the Middle East or in the Black Sea. So what is that reason that would trigger Turkey to prevent Russia from passing the Bosphorus, or maybe some other countries, littoral countries in the region? So coming from here, I would definitely like to speak, I skip everything about the international law here. Alina perfectly described this problem. It seems to me that the main characteristic of today Black Sea region, first of all, it is the lack of multilateralism, or let's say the loss of multilateralism spirit that we used to have 10 years ago. And it is not only importance, not from the important, but impotence of BSEC, but because of the national egoism of some of the countries as well. So first of all, it is lack or loss of multilateralism. The second is the back to the hard security as a top priority. And the third trend that we are starting witnessing now, that the other big actors, they are not returning because they've never been a serious actors yet, but trying to formulate their vision and their positions about the Black Sea region. Here we speak about the United States, and we saw how the last year the interest in Washington started to increase. The second is NATO, that is also speaking about formulating a certain strategy for this region. And we see European Union, who is trying to reshape maybe their Black Sea strategy, and few others. So China as well, Japan as well. So it seems to me that the next few years will be about them being with the better articulated position about the Black Sea region.
Thank you very much. All very interesting. Does not paint necessarily a pretty picture, but we'll talk in round two about maybe how to move forward. And you've actually asked some very poignant questions, which I think Mustafa Aydin, let's hear your perspective, and very interesting also regarding Montreux and the issue of maritime security, which is really emerging as a crucial issue for the security of the region. Mustafa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dimitri. I'll leave the Montreux to the discussions and go right into the topic. As you mentioned, our paper on 2020, Vision for 2020, and it's already 2020. In that paper, we thought of some remedies or policies that if employed by the actors, in the region, they could have prevented what we end up today. And obviously nobody really read our paper, or they didn't care what we wrote. So nobody employed those suggestions or advices, and we are where we are. You know? But I put a link to that report in the chat if anybody wants to look at it. What we saw about 10 years ago in the region. So I agree with both of our speakers, Hannah and Alina. Of course, 2014 was the defining moment for the region in recent years, but 2014 moment did not start in 2014. It was 2008 that the moment really started, and the sins of the 2008 got us where we get in 2014. And since 2014, everything started to going downhill, of course. So the biggest challenge, I would also agree with everybody here, that the biggest challenge of security in the region today is the Russian challenge. The Russian challenge is a number of different aspects. Of course, one aspect already mentioned, that this hybrid threat that it is posing to different countries in the region. But also the second aspect related to this hybrid threat, but also wider than that, is A2 AD zones that Russia has created around the Black Sea. It's not only Crimea, where everybody knows about Russian A2 AD zone, but also there is another zone on the border of Armenia, between border of Armenia and Turkey. So there is already 2 zones there. And of course, if you add the missiles and everything else within the Russian territory, then Russia had created a zone in the Black Sea, which is very difficult to penetrate for the outside forces now. And another aspect of this Russian challenge is the increasing power and renovation of Russian Black Sea fleet. As you know, Russia also took Ukrainian share of the former Soviet Black Sea fleet, most of it. If I'm not mistaken, about 70% of it when it got Crimea. So what we end up now, if you look at the sea territories, in the water territories in the Black Sea, it looks like very similar to what we had during the Cold War. You know, Russia controlling much of at least almost half of the Black Sea now, and have the dominant navy in the Black Sea. This has happened since 2014. And before then, it was, as you know, there was some sort of at least an equilibrium between Turkish Navy and Russian Navy. This has changed. So this is a challenge that we have to address somehow. I don't know how, but we'll talk about it. And this is linked to second point. Of course, Hannah is already mentioned. She said the loss of multilateral cooperation, and my note was almost similar, loss of regional cooperation vision. So it's the same thing, actually. As a result of what happened between 2008 and 2014, the vision that brought us after the end of the Cold War, that brought us up to 2008, that the vision of multilateral cooperation in within the Black Sea region has collapsed. There is no appetite in any country in the region whatsoever, maybe except Turkey, to cooperate with Russia anymore. And of course, Turkish cooperation is bilateral and has different dimensions than the Black Sea cooperation. And this is, of course, it's not only due to Russian challenge and resurgence, but also the other factors also important. Turkey is changing its focus from the region and refocusing its policies and eyes into the Middle East has affected this. And also, I would say the Western withdrawal in general after 2008 has affected to this loss of regional cooperation vision. And finally, of course, what related to all this is we should not forget this frozen conflicts. I mean, because we are talking the new conflicts, let's not forget the old style frozen conflicts which are there since the end of the Cold War, and they're still there. And they always complicate the issues and also help this Russian challenge or exaggerate this Russian challenge as well. It weakens the regional actors, helps countries with a dominant vision to shape the region. And all this relates, I think, another problem in the region. If you define security in a wider context, it's a problem. It's the weakening of sovereignty of nations in the region and representative democracy. This is for various reasons, and many reasons, of course, happening. But nevertheless, the end result is weakening of many regimes in the region, both domestically and internationally. And that will be, of course, affecting this loss of multilateral vision. It's also affecting the increasing influence of Russia, and etc. So these are, I think, the current key challenges to the region. And all this together, if you take all this together, it's moving towards a kind of a primacy of hard security in the region now, as we saw during the Cold War. I mean, since the end of the Cold War, hard security was kind of pushed behind for all this talk of technical and economic cooperation and etc. Even though everybody realized, everybody knew these problems, hard security problems there, but they all try to push it to the back of their minds. But now this hard security issues came to dominate the region. And in this kind of a region, I don't see how we will be able to develop a new policy or something way out. Let me stop here.
Okay, well, very interesting. Interesting. I mean, it's the same leitmotif that we've heard so far. And it's not necessarily a very pleasant situation, but it's a very real one. I've just received a word from Tedo. He's having connection problems, so he probably cannot join us. He has a problem back home. And anyway, so we can continue with our discussion, because the second round, I mean, I've listened to you very carefully. I'm taking copious notes. And I was just thinking about the second question that I have in mind. I had asked you to sort of examine is this current situation, which is what it is, with militarization being on the rise or hard security being on the rise in the region, tenable? What could happen? What could it lead to? And of course, Mustafa tried to answer part of the second question, which was also, is it possible to develop in this context some sort of security complex to reduce tensions? And if possible, how? Because we are at a sort of breaking point. These are, maybe we'll go again, starting with Alina, to see what you guys think. And also, I'm just thinking also, Alina, about other issues. I mean, I mentioned the work you do and the work you do on a daily basis with the Black Sea Trust and funding civil society projects, funding youth projects and others. Are those in this environment, is this just to maintain some sort of sanity, or do we actually, can these develop into mechanisms eventually among civil society at large that can balance off this hardcore militarization? And if we are moving away from the model that occurred at the immediate end of the Cold War, which was a regional thing, so the BSEC was included all the countries, even though it's had its problems, right? Can we maybe move to some sort of regional or sub-regional cooperation? And is this a way also forward? I mean, it exists and it really doesn't exist, but is this maybe a way forward? Floor is yours, Alina.
A lot of questions. Let me start with the first one. Is the situation tenable? Listen, do we want it to be tenable? I mean, the situation, it's not at our advantage as it is. So it might be tenable if we continue the way we've done so far, which is to let Russia have the upper hand. But do we want it to be tenable? I think we don't. And I also see, a lot of signs from international organizations and from countries around the region that they don't want this situation to be tenable. How we change it? How we go about changing it without creating a even bigger mess in the region, to put it this way. And I think Mustafa somewhat hinted at it. First of all, we need increased deterrence in the region. We need to have a stronger posture. NATO needs to have a stronger posture. Other international organizations need to have a stronger posture to do away with the A2AD domination of Russia. And again, there are very many signs. There are good signs that, as Hannah said lately, the Black Sea region is getting higher and higher on the agenda within NATO, within EU. So this is a good sign, but we need even more seriousness from these organizations, from these institutions, from NATO, first of all, when it comes to as I said, strengthening our posture, and from the littoral states as well. The big weaknesses, the two big weaknesses that I see, I actually know there are three that I noted. Naval security, we are still weak, we are still divided here. This is, the Montreal Convention doesn't help either, but that's a different conversation. That needs to be addressed. Military mobility in the region, in the countries around the sea itself. And then I'll come back to the non-military actions, to the hybrid actions, where again we are one step behind Russia, at least. So these are the three main priorities that I see need to be addressed in order to not make the current situation tenable. When it comes to regional cooperation, and when it comes to regional complex of security, if you want. Now, this is very complicated. It's been complicated in the last years. Conversations never really went very far when it comes to a really regional, security cooperation. But there are regional formats whatsoever where some things happen. Maybe they do not include all of the countries. I'm not talking about Russia here. Maybe they do not include some of the countries, but in different combinations, countries in the Black Sea region are coming together to address security issues. I'm talking about the B9 here, the B9 format, where a lot of good decisions have been pushed forward under this format. I'm even talking about the 3 Seas initiative, which does have a security component. And there, when it comes to the naval security, there are well, still talks, but however, even initiatives actually between different littoral states. So there are things which are being attempted, and there are even little successes to some almost regional formats, to put it this way. Civil society, and can regional cooperation among civil society help help diminish the pressure in the region? Yes, it can. First of all, civil society is extremely active when it comes to disinformation and countering Russian and Chinese fake news. This tendency and this specialization is growing within civil society in all of the countries in the region. This is something that we, the international community, have been nurturing for the first years, and it's showing some signs of success. So at least when it comes to this, yes, civil society is extremely important. But then civil society, and not only civil society, media as well, is extremely important when it comes to creating and nurturing a culture of security. Populations in the countries in the Black Sea region do not have a culture of security. They do not understand the threats. They do not understand the vulnerabilities. They do not understand the urgencies of some situation, and they are very easily manipulated. So a culture of security needs to be cultivated in the countries in the Black Sea region. And again, civil society and media are playing a very important role here.
Thank you, Alina. You know, as you were talking also about the hybrid action and then civil society, I remember today one of your colleagues from the Balkan Trust for Democracy on Facebook had actually put a very nice chart about, with a question, who gives the most aid to Serbia? And it has 2 diagrams. One is Who do Serbians think give the most aid? 40% China, EU 17%, Russia 14%, others 27%. And who actually gives Serbia the most aid? Well, 1.19 million euros the EU, then Germany 189 million, then the US 161, then the UN 141, China and Russia nowhere there. But it's very interesting how this this battle is being played also, and it's having an impact also on how civil society functions, and therefore the same thing in terms of hybrid misinformation, disinformation is occurring in the Black Sea region.
But can I add something here, Dimitrios, because it's very important. If you ask the same question about Serbia in Germany or anywhere else in Europe, everybody has the same perception.
It's true.
So it's not only the Serbs perceiving this, it's everybody perceiving the same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hannah, same questions, floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Dimitrios. First of all, it's definitely the question how we can reduce the tensions. And here we can go from the top level to the our more local sub-regional levels, because there are a lot of tensions. But however, one big in the middle of everything is the Russian Federation. And I understand as being Ukrainian, I could be perceived as, or you're always blaming Russia, but let's be honest, when you go to Moldova, the situation with Transnistria is understandable. The forces are still there, even that they needed to be withdrawn back in 1999. Georgia, the same situation with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. We go even to Nagorno-Karabakh situation. Again, we can see the Russian hand, even if their Azerbaijan and Armenia are perfectly doing worse with the security situation by themselves, but with the Russian assistance, it's coming even better when you put it in the brackets. But currently, definitely the biggest problem, it is the lack of the trust, and this lack of the trust is coming because of the Crimean annexation. Not just from the fact of annexation, because some people can say, oh, it's just a piece of land, but the question is how many norms of the international law were violated. And if we accept it, yes, we as an expert can be cynical enough and to say that any agreements are just the gentleman agreements, and it's up to us to change what have been signed in Helsinki. But let's be honest, the international order for the last several centuries are based on certain international agreements that the partners agreed to limit themselves or to cooperate or to do something. So as soon as we still agree that the international agreements and conventions and treaties and everything means something, so we should look to Crimea from the completely different situation. It's not just annexation of the land. It is violation of all those principles, not even norms, but first of all, principles by which even the Soviet Union and the United States lived back in the 1970s, 80s, and so on. So the second problem, it is this disorder that it's created. It is the complete feeling of uncertainty, because you can't be sure what and how will happen next day. Because back on the 1st of January of 2014, Ukraine couldn't imagine that something like this would happen. So most of the countries with which Russia has the relations, again, are not sure who will be the next one or how it can happen. Not speaking about the greater militarization of the region, because definitely what is happening with the with Crimea now, it's not only the Black Sea Fleet, it is the whole complex of the very heavy militarization of the region. And the next one is the human rights. It is violation of the ethnic minorities, of the rights of Crimean Tatars, of the Ukrainians. There's something that Europe already forgot that can happen. So it seems to me that without resolving this situation, you can't say that tensions will disappear. You can't start trading or doing the big projects of the Black Sea Highway or something like this if you can't address the core of the problem. As soon as we will be afraid to speak about what is the real problem of all this instability, tensions, lack of trust in the region, it will be very difficult to be honest with ourselves and to make a proper strategic appraisal of the region. But at the same time, I can agree that sub-regional security or a formulation of the certain sub-regional alliances can be of the interest. Here, the question is definitely whom with whom, so not to make even greater lines of competition or the confrontation in the region. But here it seems to me is also interesting that the external players are quite interesting in the possible sub-regional security arrangement. And for example, the dialogue, it's trialogue that is happening between Poland, Romania, and Turkey annually. That's something very unique that we couldn't expect before, but it's really give a hope that it can be different arrangements within this region, different engagement. What started to be more and more active since 2014, the Ukrainian-Romanian security dialogue. The drills, the military exercises that we had at the Danube or in the Black Sea, recently among the Coast Guards, honestly, that's something I couldn't imagine back in 2012, because at that time, some politicians in Ukraine preferred to describe Romania as the, if not competitor, so even the enemy, or that it is Romania that would like to annex some of the Ukrainian parts. And now this crisis of 2014 really demonstrated with whom it's better to cooperate more effective, and where we still have their horizons and perspectives for this cooperation. Ukraine and Georgia is something that I probably even don't need to describe, because that is since very beginning of independence for both states were always very important. It's just different capacities that we have. But because of this, probably like Alina already talked about naval cooperation that we need on NATO here. And because all of this, I just remembered about the new word that we are starting to use more and more, it is resilience. Resilience is a topic that is giving more opportunities for the Black Sea countries for also security cooperation, especially if we go to the resilience from the NATO 7 baselines that they describe. And I know that 2 years ago in the NATO headquarters, the Black Sea countries already started to speak about what can be the Black Sea resilience. Can it be regional resilience, or can we speak only about national resilience? And in October, it's still planned. With this pandemic, we don't know what will be in practice, but at least it was announced and planned that the first NATO-Ukrainian resilience exercises for the Black Sea region should take place. 200 people, including all types of ministries, so not only military, and that is returning to the hybrid threat that we are talking about. So those involved with the information security of the country, cyber security of the country, public opinion, media, or transport, ethnic minorities, all of them should be involved in these exercises together with the NATO officials and affiliated like centers of excellency. Because people understand that probably total defense is something difficult to achieve and very expensive, because we can't just establish total security in the Black Sea region. We know all our limitations. So at least we can speak about resilience. And that is a topic that really can bring both civil society and governmental institutions in the Black Sea region. It can involve those countries which are hesitating, like Bulgaria, for security cooperation in the region. But through resilience, we can raise more and more of the security concerns that we currently have within the region.
Thank you. Thank you. Very comprehensive sort of ideas that one can work from. Mustafa. And then after you're done, we'll take some questions. There are 3 or 4 people, very interesting questions that people are asking.
Okay, thank you. Is it tenable, as Alina said, yes, if you accept the conditions and conditions attached to the situation. But most countries in the region do not like what they are dealt with currently. However, the problem is beyond the region. And most of the countries in the world, and I think the Black Sea countries also included in this, are in a kind of a waiting mood to see where the current volatility in international politics are going to take us. Because there is this kind of very fluid character of international relations today. And the militarization and securitization is kind of an order of today globally, everywhere. So we cannot really remove Black Sea from that kind of a threat. And the countries and the powers who can change the situation in the Black Sea or have the ability to change the situation in the Black Sea are also caught up in this fluidity. They are dealing with different regions. They are looking different dimensions of international politics, and they are not committing themselves at the moment. And the Black Sea seems to be a small player in the pot here, or small token in the pot. So not focus is not getting into the region. In order to change the situation in the Black Sea, of course, and offer some sort of a hope for the future, what is needed is a kind of a overall change of current policies, priorities, focuses of several actors who used to be very active in the Black Sea region. And I don't see this is happening, by the way, but I have to mention, I think this is the only way to change the current situation, security situation in the Black Sea, and maybe to develop something for the region. Otherwise, I don't see a much chance. One of the actors is, of course, my country, Turkey. Turkey's focus is not in the Black Sea, and I don't know how long will it take that it will come back to the Black Sea, but it's needed. Turkey is the only regional country that can not anymore balance Russia itself, but that can play a role balancing Russia with other actors in the region. If you take out Turkey, there is no other country which can affect, create a grouping in the region which somehow balances the Russian position. So we need to bring back Turkey into the Black Sea if there is going to be a change in the Black Sea security situation. The second is, of course, EU. The EU, I always been very critical. Those who know me about the Black Sea issues, when I talk about the Black Sea issues, I have always been very critical about the EU position in the Black Sea and also in the Caucasus. And I think EU position, if there is a position at all now, has to change very radically. And one of my criticism has always been EU have never really cooperated with Turkey in the region. My focus, my argument has always been that EU position and Turkish position usually go next to each other without cooperating, and sometimes really clashed in the past. Currently, of course, we don't see two actors are really clashing in the region because they are not there anymore anyway. And US is, of course, need to sharpen its position in the region. I'm not sure whether US has a position in the region anymore. I mean, since 2007, more or less. 2008 was the nail. But after 2014, what is the US position in the region except trying to punish Russia with its economic aspect of the his dealing with Russia. So do I see that this changes in these three powers and actors, the policies of these three powers and actors? No, I don't. Unfortunately, as I said, in the current situation, I don't see. So that's why I don't see much changing current stalemate in the Black Sea. But many people are forgetting now that even this kind of a focus is not enough. You know, Crimea was not the first instance of violation of rules of international law in the Black Sea region. In almost, well, not almost, I think in all frozen conflicts in the Black Sea, international rules were violated. In Nagorno-Karabakh, in Abkhazia, in South Ossetia, and finally in Crimea now, which is becoming, I think, also another frozen conflict in the region. So unless we go back to basics and start discussing honestly and kind of forcing a jumpstart solution for starting maybe from the oldest frozen conflict, trying to solve them. Otherwise, we honestly do this. There is no way of trying to create a security environment, because these problems prevented creation of security zone in the region in the past, and nothing has changed except maybe new problems being added daily. So we have to go back to the older problems and trying to start solving them if we want to do anything. In the absence of all this, as I said, you know, I don't expect these to be happening. So in the absence of all this, my suggestion is for the NATO members and NATO partner countries in the region, maybe they could start intensifying their own cooperation and their own coordination between their own policies vis-a-vis Russian challenge that I spoke of in the first time I spoke. Alignment of their policies, close cooperation are needed. It's not there, and to overcome even the, you know, sometimes the reluctance of some countries, including Turkey. If Turkey is not very willing to invest more in the Black Sea or focus in the Black Sea, then the other countries in the region, which are worrying about the situation, have to invest more, trying to pull Turkey back to the Black Sea. As I said, without the Turkey in the region, there is no sort of a grouping which can create a balancing situation in the Black Sea region. By the way, this balance, the equilibrium in the Black Sea, was behind the reason for the multilateral cooperation initiative succeeded in the region. You know, let us not be very naive to suppose that you know, liberalism was triumphant in the Black Sea. It was the reality of the balance or equilibrium in the military sector that forced Russia in a position within the multilateral cooperation. So they were kind of contained there. Once that military position has changed, everything changed. So let me stop here.
Thank you. Thank you for very comprehensive answers. Let me go quickly to the questions. We'll just do a run over maybe 10 minutes. There are 4 or 5 questions here. I think we've touched upon some of the things. I mean, maybe Mustafa, continuing to what you were saying, there's a question from Oksana Andrei regarding energy projects in and around the Black Sea and Turkey's role there and Russian-Turkish cooperation. And so you've answered the part about Turkey playing a role to diffuse tensions, but the energy equation is interesting in that sense. And then maybe also Ambassador Hasan Gögüş writes that he was one of the drafters of the CBMs in the Black Sea region in the 1990s, which the US was not very sympathetic about. And what happens to those ideas? So maybe we start with you, Mustafa, you can quickly answer. And then there's one also linked, it's not linked, it's a bit of a loaded question, I think, but from Hassan Yilmaz about does Russia enhance stability in the region against Western interventionism, which is exactly what the opposite of what we've been talking about, but it's interesting. So maybe Mustafa very quickly, and then I'll give the floor to also to Alina and Hannah. Put on your mic. Yeah.
Yes. Quickly for Roxana's question, one of the assumptions behind this question is, of course, Turkey's need for energy cooperation in the Black Sea. Something very interesting happening in recent months. Since the prices of oil have taken a deep plunge and also affecting the natural gas prices in the free market, Turkey has been diversifying its resources. And now, I don't have figures with me now, but I was attending some other meeting and I heard that now Turkey is buying more natural gas from free market, spot market, than Russia. And Russia, as you know, was about 50–55% of Turkey's dependence on Russian gas was 55% before all this started. And I think it's declined now, like maybe 25% of Turkey's gas is now coming from Russia. So this is very interesting. If this is going to continue, then we might see some changes because, of course, a new line from new gas from Azerbaijan is also coming into Turkey, and with the addition of this spot market, Turkey might be in a position to renegotiate its deals with Russia, because most of Turkey's deals with Russia is ending by the end of 2021. So that's, I think there will be some very interesting moments to watch on this dependency here. But I don't see Turkey currently, with Turkey's current diversity of foreign policy problems and issues, and the places that Turkey is very active, I don't see Turkey coming back into the Black Sea and trying to deal with the challenge of Russia. Turkey is already very much engaged with Russia in different issues and trying to balance all of these together, which is very difficult act. I don't see another issue from Turkish decision makers, another region that is Black Sea, to come back and to make the relations more difficult. So Syria is already very much loaded, and now the Libya is added, and somehow Caucasus is not talked about between Turkey and Russia. So in short, again, I don't see much of Turkey coming back to the region to balance Russia. For the ambassador's question, I think I don't follow the American position on the Black Sea anymore. I don't know whether they have any position. Maybe Alina could say us something on this. So I'll jump the ball to Alina.
Okay. Well, before I give the floor to Alina also, I mean, there is another question also that you might want to consider, which is, I mean, it was partly addressed by all of you, a question from Ishik Gurleyen regarding the withdrawal of the West from the region and why the three members of the EU and NATO are not being able to engage with Western actors. So 3 EU members, I mean, we consider the wider region, it's Greece, Romania, and Bulgaria. NATO, it's 4 members, including Turkey in that sense. And so this is also something we've sort of alluded to, but maybe you can answer that question together with a question that Mustafa passed on to you. Okay, go ahead. You're on.
I know. The U.S. position on the Black Sea. Listen, I think it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty clear. The U.S. is very interested in both the eastern flank and the Black Sea, because the eastern flank does include all the countries all the way up to the Baltic Sea, and probably we should be talking about the Baltic Sea as well. And I think it's been made very clear this position with the missile shield, that elements of the missile shield that it installed in Romania and in other countries in the region as well. Also, the US is a constant participant in all of the military exercise, naval and non-naval exercises in the Black Sea. So its interest in the Black Sea and its commitment to the Black Sea, I think it has been proven over the past few years. Now, there is a caveat to this. As I was saying earlier, we can see that the US is reconsidering its military posture worldwide, not only in the Black Sea. I don't even think Black Sea is necessarily very high on the list, but throughout the world, including in Europe. Will this new posture that they are designing and they are even threatening with, I might say, will this new posture eventually affect the Black Sea, and we'll see a withdrawal or at least a reduction in their interest in the Black Sea. It remains to be seen. It very much depends on the upcoming elections in the United States as well. So this is the unknown that I was actually mentioning in the beginning of my opening remarks. But the U.S. position and the U.S. interest in the Black Sea has been proven throughout the past few years, starting with 2014. That's when they actually woke up. As about the other question regarding the three EU members, again, I think they've done a good deal of their part. They could have definitely done more. But again, when you consider the NATO Warsaw Summit and everything that was discussed there and decided there, and everything that has been implemented after the Warsaw Summit, this is a result of the intense lobby and activity and advocacy and effort of the countries in the Black Sea region. So at least Romania, to a certain extent Bulgaria, also Poland, which is not mentioned here, they have been very active in promoting the interests of the Black Sea. Could they have done more? Definitely. Definitely, there is much to be done, and it remains to be seen to what extent they will increase their efforts. So the short answer is no, I don't think they're failing. Maybe they are not getting an A grade, but they're not failing.
Okay, let's move on to Hannah. There's also a question in particular. I mean, you can answer some of the other ones, but there's the first question, which has to do with Ukraine. As you saw from Furkan Terzi, who I think is not with us anymore, but he was asking about Ukraine's position with regard to Russia since Zelensky has become president of Ukraine. And then also I'll just put the last question, which came from Iter Aykut, and maybe even Mustafa could answer later, but also you, Hannah. I mean, there's a big debate in Turkey in particular about reshoring, especially in light of COVID-19, and we saw everyone needing supplies from China, medical equipment, PPEs, and everything else. And so one of the Turkish arguments is, well, we are more dependable than the Chinese, use us as a production facility for all this strategic equipment and so on. So the question is this something possible, and how can the Black Sea nations cooperate around this and become a regional supplier, and therefore whether this contributes to some sort of regional security? So Hannah.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. So very quickly, question by question. First of all, about the Zelensky position towards Russia, we see that his position has been evolving during the year. So definitely Zelensky now is not Zelensky that we as a country elected back in April 2019. And his position towards Russia became much stronger, less compromised, with the better articulation and better understanding of the threat. So if in the very beginning he was avoiding naming Russia as an aggressor, he was very human-centric in his vision of the conflict in the east of Ukraine, and he was speaking about a lot of humanitarian initiatives and was almost forgetting about security. So reality on the ground, and his first negotiations, direct negotiations with Vladimir Putin back in December, definitely opened his eyes. And we see that his position is developing. It's still that one of a little bit pacifistic approach that he definitely would like to finish this crisis as soon as possible. But at the same time, he is already speaking about all security concerns, and he is understanding that it is, unfortunately, he will not be able to finish the conflict by the end of this year as he dreamt a year ago. So it seems to me that soon we probably can see the new vision from his side. We still don't have a strategy. And about Russia, he is dividing people and, or let's say diversifying people and Kremlin. So he is still very much within the Russian/Soviet cultural circle because of his past business. but he's becoming more and more Ukrainian-centric than what we've seen before. And coming with the China, you know, for Ukraine, China is the biggest trade partner as well. And but at the same time, we can't say that we are dependent on it, because here it is quite an interesting situation. There are mostly the supplies that we used to buy from AliExpress and so on that the last years were increasing. But at the same time, China is interesting in Ukrainian goods as well, even that we are with a negative balance still. I don't believe in the Black Sea suppliers or to become a supplier and the reason for cooperation, because unfortunately, I think that is a reason for competition. And what we can see now that when the European countries, when the United States are starting to speak about moving their manufacturing from China to other countries, many of the Eastern European countries, including the Black Sea countries, will be competitors to where these investments will come, where the new enterprises can appear. So that is definitely not the same as we had with energy in the Black Sea region. It's not the question where Ukraine and Turkey would become partners. That is where we'll be at least perceiving ourselves as the competitors for these new possibilities. But at the same time, Ukraine has just started to developing the Asian strategy. So we are definitely still searching our vision and position about China. And here it's also the question of probably balancing with other Asian partners and where the Black Sea region can find themselves, because we know that Japan is very interesting in the Black Sea. So maybe Japan can become that third actor that will unite.
It has always been. It has always been.
It's always been, especially in Guam. It is one of the biggest supporters of Guam idea, and it will be really interesting to see how Japan maybe will develop its position in the region. And very short comment of few of the questions that we had here about the U.S. First of all, let's be honest, why U.S. was not involved that much. There are two reasons. Reason number one, especially when we speak about the U.S. within NATO, because Turkey promised that they are the best channel of communication, that Turkey is protecting the interest. And it was easier to, when there were still very good relations between Turkey, let's say Ankara and Washington, US was busy in Afghanistan or in Iraq. They trusted Turkey here. Then in 2014, the realization came that probably that information from Turkey was not enough, or Turkey was too soft towards Russia. Now we can only say why it's happened, but it is a reality. At the same time, we know Trump's position that he thinks that Europeans should deal with their issues by themselves. And for the last few years, he was promoting this a lot. That's why the United States was not looking for the new regions for increasing their presence, and Black Sea was quite peaceful from their side comparing to other regions. But what I really started to see for the last few months is that at the expert level of those think tanks which are really involved in the policy making and decision making, so not the academician, but those who are really involved in the Washington policy making, they started to organize more and more events, closed door and open door about the Black Sea. They are trying to formulate a position of the United States about the Black Sea. So it seems to me that after presidential elections, we will see probably a more coherent and articulated US position. And very small comment about one of the questions that I was really surprised to read from one of our participants, that don't you think Russia enhances stability in the region against Western interventionism? Honestly, I just would like to ask, is this person thinks that killing 10,000 people in the east of the neighboring country is enhancing stability, or arresting Crimean Tatars daily, it is enhancing stability? So probably our perception of stability is very different.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah, for answering the question. Maybe Mustafa or Alina, you want to add something else before we close? Mustafa, there's also the question about Montreux, which was never answered. Very nicely, you avoided it. But especially the question about China and reshoring and this whole thing, whether this could play a role. I mean, we heard Alina, we heard Hannah's perspective. Maybe you have something to say, and then yeah, we have 1 minute.
Yeah, I never avoid any questions. I don't see any.
Okay,
I don't see any relevancy of discussing Montreux here. I don't agree with anybody who opposes Montreux. I mean, I study history. I looked at the history, and this part of the world has been in conflict since the 17th century because of the Straits question. I mean, it was the Eastern question people talked too much about in the 19th century was about the control of the Straits or Turkish Straits. So the Montreux Convention solved that problem, and it has created a kind of an equilibrium, a kind of a modus operandi in the region, which survived the Cold War. And let me tell you, nobody likes the Montreux Convention, which makes me to think that it's the best solution. If Russians liked it, I would have my doubt. If the Americans liked it, I really would have my doubt. But if the Romanians or Ukrainians or Turks, well, Turks do like it anyway. But we have our own questions too. So I think that's because, we have to think the alternative. If we start talking, let's change Montreux Convention, do you see any possibility in international relations today to getting the Russians and Americans, let alone all the other regional countries, forget everybody else, do you think the Russians and Americans could agree a better way of dealing with the Strait question, including also put this mix to Turkey as well? So that's almost impossible. So let's make the best use of Montreux instead of Montreux bashing. So that's your answer about Montreux. Regarding the China and the cooperation in the region, I totally agree with Hannah here because I agree there was, in the best of the times, there was a problem of economic cooperation with the regional countries because of their production bases are not complementary. They are competitive. They produce similar products and almost in the similar quality. So I don't see, as just like Hannah, I don't see their ability to cooperate to benefit from this reshoring. Okay. Thank you.
Alina, you have the last word before my last word.
Yeah, of course. No, very briefly, I think one of the things which is not being talked enough in the region is economic cooperation. We talk about security cooperation, but economic cooperation has been is very much lagging behind. So yes, of course, I do agree. I do agree with Hannah, but I think one of the things that needs to be done and to be taken more seriously is to go back to discussing and finding ways to increase economic cooperation. One, on Montreux Convention, well, there are alternatives. They are called unmanned naval vehicles, and there is a whole search out there to find drones and to find other new technologies which can actually bypass the Montreux Convention and still help with a naval deterrence in the Black Sea. But otherwise, I agree with Mustafa, it's a closed discussion. Nobody wants to have it. So we have to look for alternative solutions.
Well, thank you very much. I thought I knew a lot, but I've learned a lot from the debate and the discussions, and lots of food for thought here. And maybe we need to, I mean, Alina keeps reminding me that we need to work on a project to move ahead with this. Mustafa and I talk about it also, we've talked about it. An update of our 2020 vision, which maybe it's time to, but even though—
2040 vision now.
40 vision. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking part in this debate, to the three speakers that provided their insights, and to all of you that have been following us. So we tried our best to answer your questions and to have a nice discussion about the region. And hopefully next time we have a discussion, maybe there are some signs that things are more positive. Let's see. Thank you again. This was very good. Thank you. Thanks, Alina. Thanks, Hannah, and thanks, Mustafa.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation.
Bye-bye.
The audience.
Okay.